Welcome back to yet another 213 crispy video, and today starts the very first of the Antique RC video series that I plan on doing. And what we have on our workbench today is a RC10T. I'm guessing late 80s, early 90s. I do still have the original box somewhere. I'm just trying to think where I have it at the moment, but I do have the original box. I have the original controller that it came with, which is an old Futaba Magnum Jr., which was this guy right there. And I've got a bunch of motors. I've already tinkered with this a little bit off of camera to make sure that I am not wasting time on just kind of going through the monotonies of cleaning everything to find out that something doesn't function correctly. So, first things first, you're going to notice I've already gone through, updated some of the electrical stuff. I put some XT60 plugs on it. I did make a little XT60 to a Dean's plug adapter because my LiPo does run off of a Dean's plug still. I do even have some of the original manufacturer parts for the RC10T. I got a shock rebuild kit that was only $4 when it was new. None of these have dates on them, but I know for a fact that this stuff is old. It was my father's, and he raced it on dirt track with my brother. My brother ran a Losi XT, I think it's JRXT. And then my dad ran this. So there's some history to this. It's been in the family since it was brand new. And the only reason why I say late 80s or early 90s is because I was too young to truly remember absolutely everything about it. I'm 34 now, but I do remember going to the tracks. I just never raced dirt with these trucks. I grew up in the mid-90s racing on oval tracks predominantly with my pan car. But that's this in a nutshell. Of the history of what this is doing. So what I plan to do today is I want to get all the electronics out. I want to get the battery tray out. And I want to get this thing stripped down to a rolling chassis. And I am going to give this thing probably the deepest cleaning that it's ever had in its probably entire life. And what we're going to be using to clean this is scrubbing bubbles. I know it sounds really weird, but a good friend of mine that is a robotics mechanic and engineer, he swears by this stuff, and supposedly from what he told me, it is safe to use on the electronics. Now, I am not going to do that. I will use it on the electronics, but I'm going to use like a toothbrush or something and be very gentle and be very what's the word I'm looking for? Skimpy with the chemicals and stuff around the electronics. Because the last thing I want to do is actually damage one of these. My goal is to get these back to original as possible, and for me to do that, I want to keep the original radios. I want to keep the original servo. I want to keep the electronic speed controls. I actually already have rebuilt the motor that is in this, and it's currently a Trinity Midnight motor, which I believe is a stock motor. It is not a modified motor. I've got about 15 motors, and I forget which one's which, but I do know that this motor does work. I did a full rebuild on it. We'll go over that in a little bit, but for now, I just wanted to give you guys an introductory as to what this thing looks like, because next time you see it, it's going to be predominantly stripped apart. So with that, I'm going to pause this. You guys will be right back, and we're going to have this thing stripped down to a chassis. Okay, guys, I have been a pretty busy person today trying to get this clean and ready to go for this part of the video. So the desk is a mess, so I apologize if you're seeing all the crap around and underneath it, but as you see, this girl is nice and clean, about as good as it's going to get. Took apart all 4 shocks, rebuilt them, and kind of set them back up roughly to where I think that they should be. So I'm going to show you the nasty gunk that was inside these 4 shocks. You guys should be able to see that. Pretty nastiness. So, yes, before you ask the question, I did use Team Associated silicone shock oil. So I put 30 in the front, 40 in the rears. This is original stuff that we bought with this truck. I am ready to start installing everything back into this truck. So first things first, we're going to go over some principal guidelines on how I set these up. So originally, this battery box is supposed to go right there. The problem with this location is when I go to install my new LiPo battery pack, it does not play very well. So I'm forced to having to recess this back towards the front a little bit, which then threw havoc on my servo because it had the arm that stuck out just like this side. So I had to basically break off this arm for some clearance to get that to fit where it needs to fit. That way I can still use this LiPo battery pack. I don't want to destroy the back end completely, but I did use a heat gun to pry this up a little bit to try to get me some clearance, but it does not fit in the original hole location. So my 2 options are to drill 2 new holes farther forward and use those holes to mount these battery packs in. I'm just going to use a bunch of double-sided tape. I've done this in the past, and it works pretty well, actually. Long as you get the surface clean, double-sided sticky tape is actually extremely, it holds real well. Now, over time, it's probably not the best thing in the world, like in 10 years from now, that we may not want to use this for that, but for what I'm going to use it for, it will be just fine. I do need to find a pair of scissors, so bear with me, guys, real quick while I walk over here to my toolbox. Okay, that ain't gonna work. So I guess I'll use a utility knife. I have a pair of scissors, but I don't see them. So, first things first, we're going to cut off some strips of double-sided sticky, and we are going to put it on the back of our tray, battery tray here, as soon as I get the hair off of it. That looks good. Okay, so double-sided stickied this on. We're going to peel off our red tape. Come on. Come on. This is the downside to double-sided tape. I hate dealing with this stuff. It's great. It works fantastic. Don't get me wrong. It's just sometimes it takes patience, and sometimes I just don't have patience. There we go. That's one. Two. So I'm going to use the battery as a mold. So this way I know exactly where I need to be at. It should be about right there. That looks close to me. So push down. I'm going to leave this battery in there for now, for the time being. So you're going to do the same thing to your steering servo. I've already prepped the bottom side of it. It was just being held on by double-sided tape as well. So actually everything in this truck, besides this battery door, or battery tray, was being held in by double-sided tape. So now this truck is engineered. It kind of has some unique things to it, which I enjoy. And I don't know if this is original or if this is something my father did. Again, I was too young to really remember. I mean, I would have been 5 or 6. And like I said, I remember being at the tracks. And I remember the tracks. I didn't run it. I didn't race it. So I don't know what all he did to the truck because I was too young to remember. But come on. There's a hole in the side here that allows you to gain access to the nut that holds that on. So I am going to mount this as far towards the rear of the buggy or truck that I can, but I also want it square to the chassis in relationship to the arm. But I also don't want it resting up against anything, because God forbid something flexes or something moves. You're going to want a little bit of room for things to shimmy around a little bit. You don't want everything crammed right up against each other. I am happy with the location of this. So like I was telling you about the arm for the steering arm, you want to make sure you're close into relationship of this arm. And you know what? It's turned, that's why. So I believe it should be close to straight, which would be this way. Wait a minute, do I have this backwards? I think I do. No, I think I'm alright. I know my big fat head's in the way, guys. Bear with me. Oh, come on. Okay, that's why. Try and put it on backwards. I flip this back over. The arm itself I was trying to put on backwards. So it's like something ain't lining up, something wasn't very kosher, so that looks pretty good to me. There we go. Take our screwdriver and screw. And this is what I was talking about. It's got a hole in the side that allows me to enter a screwdriver in here. Just little things like that. It's a nice touch. There you go. So the steering is in, battery is in. So now let's go ahead and do our receiver. So our receiver obviously is going to go back here. So now is the time when I will remove the battery pack. And then I am going to do this cautiously, because it's got to go up and under. Just like so. And I know, before you ask, why don't I just upgrade the electronics? Because that's not what I want to do. I am trying to keep this as original as possible for multiple reasons, but to me, it's more about the nostalgia and restoring this vehicle to how I remember it. Because I can tell you, I've spent thousands of hours driving this truck, bashing it, doing whatever, and I never drove it in any races, but I did spend plenty of time just going to town outside, in the street, gravel, driveway, blacktop, you name it, pretty much anything and everything you can find a location for this thing, I've ran it. And then lastly is going to be our electronic speed controller, which should fit perfectly in the original spot like it did, which is fantastic. So let's get this taped up. There we go. Gotta make sure that that reaches up and around and in, so I can't go too far backwards, but I don't want to go too far forwards, because I also need to make sure that I keep it near. There's two holes over here for where this switch gets zip tied to this frame, just like so. That's the on-off switch. Like I said, this thing was built to race. It's a unique old girl. It just, trust me when I say it's old, it's old. So there you have it. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this video up, and then I'm going to make another video in a few days. And that video is going to consist of putting the battery in it. We're going to hook up the electronics completely. I'm going to mount the motor, which I already had in it once, which is this one. I may do some research to try to figure out which other motor that I have is the modified version. I'm also going to put a bigger pinion in this thing because this thing is way too small. We got the tires to put on still. But all in all, I'm happy with this. It looks 1,000 times better than it did. And so far, she's coming together good, nice and clean. There's no dirt anywhere on it. Yeah, it's good. The only real spot that I didn't get super clean was back around the diff. And that's just because of this, where it's located. It's back in its hole. But, yeah. So, we're going to leave it like it is. And I'm going to take a couple close shots for you guys, for you to see what it looks like now that it's fully put back together. And you can see the before pictures and now the after pictures and compare them. And you'll see what I mean by how dusty and dirty and grimy this thing was originally. I've gone through all of the screws and everything that I could possibly find, and I've tightened everything up. I've adjusted the suspension accordingly, that way it doesn't bottom out, because even before just tinkering out my driveway, it was hitting bottom when I was trying to hit a ramp or like a curb or something like that. So I wanted to raise it up a little bit, make it a little bit more stiffer so it lands and sits and not just drop to the bottom. But yeah, we're done. So thank you all for watching on the part 1 of this video, and make sure you guys stick around to watch part 2 of our restoration of the RC10T truck. And probably at the end of video 2 we will be running this, or I may make a third video separately of just me running this vehicle out in the yard, the driveway, out in the street, hopping some curbs and that kind of stuff. And I may take this up to the Ohio RC factory and seeing if they'll let me just run a couple laps with it real quick, just to see what it'll do. More of a curiosity than anything else. I mean, obviously I'm not going to race it, but I just want to see how it handles the jumps and the straightaways and so forth on dirt, comparably to what it does on the road. But with that, comment down below if you guys have an RC10T. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think of this particular one as well. And with that, we're going to wrap this video up. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons up top, and the bell notifications. And also make sure you go check out Facebook and Instagram. There's pictures of these already posted up on there, and usually these are posted a few 2, 3, 4, 5 days in advance before I make a video. That way it gives you guys a little bit of a sneak peek. And with that, I'm done. Thank you guys for watching. Have a wonderful day.